r/AskReddit by Redditalians. Posted by user Ryan Blitzpatrick. Serious, what's your ghost story? From the time I was about 12 to 17 years old, I lived in what I believe was a haunted house. I've never had experiences like I had in that house since moving out. A few specific memories come to mind. Once I was hanging up laundry in my closet. I heard someone whisper my name in my ear, clear as day. I'd never sprinted out of a room so fast. Another time my sister and I had friends over and we decided to use a tape recorded to ask questions to the ghosts like they do on those paranormal shows. We played the tape not expecting to hear anything and could hear a very soft voice say, "I'm in the closet." We were sitting near a small closet in the basement. My parents eventually decided to sell the house. We moved into a new place before selling this place. My sister stopped by the house after there had been a couple of showings to turn out the lights in the house. She went to turn off the lights in the basement, which had multiple light switches. One was at the far end of the basement away from the stairs. She turned off the light and swears she heard heavy footfalls of someone running towards her. She ran out of the house without turning out the rest of the lights and locked the door. That was the last time either of us went back until we were in the neighborhood and the new owners offered to show us the renovations they made. Nothing happened then, but they did ask us if we wanted to babysit their kids. We politely declined. I was really young. I would guess 8 to 10 years old, but that's just a ballpark guess. I shared a room with my younger brother. Our room was very large, and for some reason we put our bunk beds right in the middle of the room, with the side of the bed facing the doorway. I had top bunk. Every morning, our mom would come into our room to wake us up for school. It was the worst feeling. This morning, I had already been awake for some time, just laying in bed. It was still dark outside. Depending on the time of year, I don't remember, it being dark when we were getting up for school might have been normal. So I'm sitting there, laying in bed, and the door to our room opens. It doesn't take much effort to turn my gaze to the door. I see a woman in some kind of white gown, who I can only assume is my mother, even though I never recall her ever wearing an outfit like that, standing in the doorway. She takes a step in, closes the door behind her, and slowly starts approaching our beds. She gets so close that I'm no longer able to see her, because of the angle I have being on the top bunk. I assume she's going to start waking up my brother at any moment, so I do that kid thing where I shut my eyes and pretend to be asleep. I wait. And wait. And wait. I finally open my eyes. The door is still closed. I'm super confused at this point, so I lean over the railing to see what she's up to. And there was no one there. I freak out and cover my head with all of my blankets and lay there for what felt like quite a bit until I fell asleep. I don't believe in ghosts. I'm sure there's a completely rational explanation for this. Maybe it was my mom, and I just didn't hear her open and close the door to leave again. Maybe there was no one there at all and I imagined the whole thing. I don't know. It's not a super interesting ghost story, but it's all I've got. It's the only weird story I have from my childhood that I can't explain today. My family moved into a somewhat older house on a lot of land when I was 7. We had the most wonderful Akita at the time, a breed known for protecting its family. My dad traveled a lot, so my mom would often be home with just us 3 kids and the dog. One day we get home from wherever, and Pluto is at the top of the stairs growling. Refuses to go down there. My mom naturally feared someone had broken in, so she made me, my older brother, and my little sister go sit in the car with 10-year-old brother in the driver's seat, telling us if she wasn't back in 10 minutes to leave and find somewhere to call the police. This was before cell phones. She ventured back into the house with a knife. Came back out a few minutes later, and hadn't found anything. So we went on with our lives. Many years later, once I'd reached adulthood, my parents revealed to us that someone had previously hung himself in the unfinished portion of the basement, where the laundry room was. My poor brother's room was in that basement. When we lived in that house is when he first began to have issues. He's now deceased after many years of drug addiction. I'm fairly convinced that house was haunted. I used to sell HVAC in Michigan, during college. There was this really awesome old dude that called for new high-efficiency furnace in his historic home in Depot Town, near Ann Arbor. As I'm putting together the quote, we get to talking about the home and its history. He tells me that it was part of the Underground Railroad and had a tunnel that led down to the train station, only about 500 yards away. I'll be honest, I was more focused on the sale than all the details he was laying out about the house. But one thing that made my ears perk up was the people that lived with him. He tells me about a few, But the one that stuck out was he said that there was a lady that was so fascinated with electricity that she would turn random lights on at random times. As I printing out the quote and going over the details and payment options with him, the light behind me turns on. Then the one across the room. Then the one in the kitchen. Then the one in the hallway. I just kinda got quiet and sunk a little in the seat. Then the old dude raised his voice and said something like, "Okay, that's enough for today, sweetheart. We can do it again tomorrow." To this day, I don't know if the old dude was just having some fun with me or it was real. Side note, I closed the sale and the install team said there wasn't anything too wonky or out of the norm with his electricity. TL, doctor, did an HVAC quote for an old historical home. Turned out to have a light-loving specter. This isn't really scary at all and maybe not what OP is looking for, but honestly even the story is normal yet far-fetched to me, but it makes sense considering my mom's cultural background. I'm Cambodian American, born and raised in America, never been to Cambodia. This takes place in California. My mom believes in good spirits and getting blessings for good luck and protection by putting out food offerings for them on our dining table. My mom does this for special days, and after she's done with her prayers, that's when anyone can eat the food. She usually does it in the morning, and then by the afternoon that's when food is free for the taking. So it's a typical afternoon. I was online on my laptop in my room and I got hungry. My room was connected to a small hallway, and at the end of the hallway is the living room and the dining table. So I opened my door and stepped out into the hallway, and I saw something on top of the table eating. It was hard to make out at first because I'm nearsighted and this thing was kinda transparent. I got closer and stopped halfway through the hallway and I realized there was a literal transparent brown monkey on the table. It was making motions as if it was eating some of the fruit offerings. It didn't notice me yet, and in my disbelief I got even closer, but when I stopped in my tracks again right at the end of the hallway, it noticed me and got startled. I'm startled, the monkey's startled, and I'm just standing there and not believing my eyes. Very quickly, this transparent monkey just jumps off the table and ambles off hastily towards the exit where the outer door is locked. That's it. I just stood there staring at the door where it fled, and I'm just like, wow, I really can't believe what I just saw. In American horror movies and scary stories, there's hardly anything about ghost monkeys. I don't consume that kind of content. And ghost monkey? Who'd have thunk it? Anyway, later on I told my mom about what I saw and she didn't even blink. I might as well have told her that the sky is blue, I'm her daughter, etc. She really believes in spirits that much and didn't doubt my story at all. Also years later I told one of my coworkers, who is also Cambodian around my age, speaks fluently, and has also been to Cambodia, about my experience. He said that there's a lot of monkeys in Cambodia. I didn't know this at all and have never seen a monkey Earl. My mom doesn't talk about monkeys and owns nothing related to monkeys. So that's my story. Neither me nor a ghost monkey expected to be spooked that day, lol. Okay, guess it's time for my long story time post. I was 5 at the time. Just moved to FL from NJ. Lived in the back of an apartment complex and on the 3rd floor. Only my mother and I. She told me recently that every single night she'd hear noises of knocking and banging and such around the apartment. The kicker of it all that proved it, I was in my room with a vaulted ceiling and had stuffed animals on shelves way higher than I could possibly reach. I was playing in there with some toys while my mother was making dinner and the door was wide open. Out of nowhere, the door slammed shut hard. Of course my mother runs to my room to check on me. Apparently I was laying in my bed and all of the stuffed animals were in a pile in the center of my room. We took a week vacation after that. Another time of proof, my mother went for some water or something in the middle of the night and saw me sleepwalking around the house and stated that I looked like I was chasing something around the house. She called out my name and apparently I answered in a deep male voice. She then ran out of the house and didn't return till morning. Don't blame her. Still get chills thinking about this shit. There were so many more than just this. Copying a post I made about this. I'm going to preface the accounting of the weird ghostly things that have happened in my house so far with a request. Please don't try to warn me of dangers or give me any suggestions to get rid of my ghost. I don't really believe in this kind of things. I'd love to believe, but I don't. If my ghost is real, I intend to keep it. It's a little contact to a world I'd love to believe is real. If things get really bad I may seek advice, but so far it's just a few stories and I thought you might get a kick out of them. So here we go. I've moved to an old, spacey apartment last year. I'm living there with my GF and my 2 sons, aged 7 and 1, who share a room. So this one night, I'm tucking the oldest one in, and he decides he needs to go to the bathroom. as boys trying to postpone bedtime are wont to do. So I hide under his covers to mess with him. I hear him walk into the room. He sits at the feet of his bed, I can feel the pressure on the mattress. He says nothing, asks nothing about why I'm all covered. Weird. Well, I go boo. And he isn't there. He comes back from the bathroom 2 minutes later, but I'm too weirded out to boo him. A few days later, I tell this story to my wife, and she tells me she also had a weird experience in their bedroom. The baby was already asleep, and she was negotiating sleep with the older one. Suddenly, she hears footsteps and sees the shadow of the baby running away to the living room. She gets up to follow him and then notices the baby is still in his bed, sound asleep. About 2 months later, one of those nights when baby wins and gets to stay in our room. Around 4 a.m. the 7-year-old also comes into our room. We ask him what's wrong and he says the baby, who has been sleeping soundly all night, has been crying all night and he can't sleep. We let him sleep in our room and say nothing about the baby not being in their room. And the final story, my GF lost her mother a long time ago. Nevertheless, she is still very attached to her, carries a picture of her everywhere. On Dia de los Muertos, she decided to put a little altar to her mother on our living room. She placed a picture of her, lit a candle and offered an apple. Now, we are not Mexican, so she did what she saw in movies, Coco, but there's a detail she didn't know, and we were told of it later. Mexicans lit special candles that smoke but make no flame for this occasions. Smoke guides the spirits of loved ones but fire may attract unwanted attention. THW whole altar flew from its place, one thing at a time. First the apple, then the picture and then the candle, like something was throwing them, a second or two between throws, so it's not that something lost balance and everything fell. My son later ate the apple, so I know if he's ever in a horror film, he's the first one to die. As stated in the story, I'm not Mexican, so I know nothing about Dia de los Muertos. What I write here about it is what I've been told, but I don't know how accurate this is, and if something about this is wrong I apologize for it, I mean no offense. These things happened last year and no further activity has been witnessed. Whenever I get sick, I get the same nightmare over and over. Background story, my room has a bed with a metal bed frame and I'm a very messy person. Anyways, so, when I get a cold or the flu, I get the same dream of a scary lady who seems to be in her 30s with very tangled black hair, fungus-covered skin and glowing silver eyes sitting on my bed frame. I can't move and she's just sitting and watching me for hours. She never moves, just sits there. Then towards the end, she becomes me and I'm looking down at myself. Well, one time I was extremely sick and all I could really do was sleep. So, one of the times I went to sleep, I woke up in the dream or in real life, I really don't know, and a gargoyle was sitting on my chest holding me down to where I could only use my eyes to look around. I was forced to look at my closet which was very messy when I went to sleep and it was exactly how I left it. The socks on the floor were exactly where I left them. The only difference was there was a 7 feet tall demon-like thing in my closet with yellow eyes, big claws, red wings with spikes and a dragon-like head. It walked closer and closer to me until I woke up screaming. I told my dad about this days later and he said he had the same dream years ago. It was creepy because we both described the demon the same way and my mom confirmed that this was exactly how he described the demon years ago. The only difference was that in his dream the demon tried to drag him underground. This happened to me when I was 9, 2010. My friend in the neighborhood found a Ouija board in his brother's stuff while he was away at college. He told me what it was and asked me if I